And cool. And so, yeah, if you could start the lesson by trying to do these questions. Over to you guys. I'm going to give you 3 minutes or so just to see what you remember from the last lesson. I suppose we have to start by remembering what the formulas are, I guess. I can maybe help you a little bit. Okay, so that should be helpful if you are thinking back on the last lesson, in case you don't have the formulas memorized. Okay. So let's just make sure we still know how to do all these questions before we go roaring on to anything new. The next one was AC, so we go 6 + 6 over 2, and then so that's 4, 2, 2. Oh, I see my TV has gone off in the background. Sorry, guys. Well, that will not do. So, and then this is 6, 2, 1. Okay, so did anybody, let's see if you, that's what I get for my midpoints. Now, what about what we call the gradient of BC and the gradient of DE? See what you can get for that. I must make sure I'm looking at the right points. BC so what do we have? It says DE. Let's probably make this a bit bigger. I'm running out of real estate here. Minus a half. Zoom right in.
Sorry, Peter.
Okay.
So they want you to scroll down a little bit so that they can see the numbers.
The numbers. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I guess they're talking about the values for A, B,
yeah, let me,
and C.
Yeah, let me go like that. There we go.
Thank you. That's perfect.
Better? Cool. Thanks, man. Yeah, sometimes it's a bit like there's just too much on the screen. And so just, yeah, grab my attention if it's not easy to see.
Noted. Thank you.
Yeah, so in Paul, I agree. For your gradient, you got -1/2. And as far as I can tell, I also get -1/2. In fact, I don't know, see if you agree with me, but I got -1/2 for both of my gradients, which is interesting. And for bonus points, what does it mean if two gradients are the same? That's coming up in a later lesson. And then for my midpoints, I got 2, 3, and 6, 1. So for DE. So there's different ways of doing this, but I just think it's important to be consistent. So I'm going to start with D and then go to E. But as long as, if you did it the other way around, that's fine, as long as you're consistent. But I'm going to get 2 minus 6, which is -4. And then I'm going to get 3 minus 1, which is -2 over there. I'm basically just going like there to there. Oh, wait. I made a mistake. Look, 2 minus 6 is -4, but then I should get 3 minus 1, which should be 2. So, because I have to be consistent. The thing is, because they're being squared, it kind of, it doesn't really end up mattering too much. So see what you get for DE and then see what you get for BC. So BC -2 minus 6. That's -8. Then 2 minus -2 is 2 plus 2, which is 4. Let's see if you agree with me. Okay, Leander, you lost by the gradient of BC. While students are finishing that, let's just go back. So in BC, the important bit about gradient, and this is really important, we spoke about this in the last lesson, is it's change in y over change in x. So when I look at the gradient of BC, which is down here, I need to find the points BC, and I'm going to start by looking at the y things because they're on top. So if I go 2 minus -2, I get 4. So that's important. And then on the bottom, I've got the y, and then I go -2 minus 6, which gives me -8. So most students, if they make a mistake, they'll make a mistake either with the negative positives or the y being in the wrong place. Don't worry, I've seen that lots of times. And so I just want to remind you, you need to develop little skill sets where the gradient is the most tricky one in the sense that you have to have the y's on top. And so what I do to help me is I always start with the y's, the 2 y coordinates, and then I write them on top first. And then I do the x's with the gradient. Okay, now with the distance formula, it's a bit more forgiving. But you still need to, I start by drawing all the brackets with the squares, and then I look for the change in x and the change in y. You just make sure that if you start at one point for x, you also start for that point in y. You always see me do that whenever I do these live. Okay, so let's see, 16 plus 4, so this should be square root 20, and then this should be 64 plus 16, which is 78. Okay, here comes the big question. Should you leave it in surd form or should you leave it as decimal? In reality, the surd form is more accurate. So if you have to go and use this in a calculation later on, which often happens in these questions, my advice is to leave it in surd form. However, if the question says, give your answer to 2 decimal places, then obviously you're going to round it off. But my preference, because these questions often build on themselves, is to leave it in surd form. So I hope that helps. So where did I get the coordinates for D? So D is the midpoint of AB. So what I did was I looked at A and B, which are here, and I said 6. So for the midpoint, you add the 2 X values. Now it's looking a little bit like a crime scene, guys. Sorry, too many lines. But these 2 go together, 6 plus minus 2. And then the next one is going to be the 4. So basically I add the 2 X's and I divide by 2. And then I add the 2 Y's and I divide by 2. So that's how I got D. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a moment. Give me a thumbs up if you are up to date and feel comfortable. Give me a sort of thumbs up and a thumbs down if you're in the middle, and give a thumbs down if you feel very confused, because these are the building blocks of the section. Okay, so I got 80 and not 78. You're absolutely correct. I made a silly mistake because I added up 64 and 16, and 64 plus 16 is indeed the square root of 80. So thank you for the alert student who pointed that out. We will continue practicing this. Okay. Now, that was a warm-up question from the previous lesson. What I want to do now is I'm going to leave that up there. I'll just make this a bit smaller before we move on. I'll leave some of it on the board for those who are still copying stuff down. For those who are, who are ready to move on, let's try and do this question. And this question, you have to use, this is a midpoint formula question, and you have to try and find X and Y. And I'm going to let you do it by yourself. And while you do that, I'm going to take questions. So Yolanda, is there a student who would like to ask questions? Or you can spot?
I think there's Suzanne has a question.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, sir. For the previous question, so did say use 6 and -2 to get -8, right?
6 and -2 to get -8. Which part of the question are we talking about?
For BC, for the lengths.
Yeah, so I took -2 and I took away 6, and that's how I got -8. So you're talking about this bit over here. So if you,
I'm confused.
So if you look at the question, it's about BC. Notice how there's a -2 and I took away 6, which gave me the -8.
Okay. So what happened to the -2? Shouldn't it be -4, or what happened to -2 at the top there?
Okay, so I'll quickly go through the steps. So apologies so what we have is B is -2, 2, and C is 6 minus 2. Now, in order to find the gradient, I always start with the Y's. So I'm going to start over here, and I'm going to go 2 minus -2. So I'm basically dealing with that. Then I also have to go -2 minus 6. And I'm hoping that, and from there, -2 is +2. So I get 4 over -8. Okay. So if M is the midpoint, this is what's a harder midpoint question. And what I want to suggest to you is I want to say, isn't it true that X plus 8 divided by 2 is 5. So remember, m is the midpoint. In order to get the x midpoint, I add the two x's together. So x plus 8 divided by 2 must give you 5. Can you help me find x from that point? Okay. And then use the same idea to help you find y. Sorry guys, I think there's someone who's, yeah. Okay, so for this part, I think I need to, because of this 2 over here, I need to times both sides by 2. And if I do that, I get x plus 8 is 10, because there's a 2 here and a 2 there, and those cancel. And then if I take away 8 from both sides, which is this, I should get that x is 2. So I get x is 2, but now I want to see what is y. Move up a little bit. So using the same idea, the y coordinate for A is 1. And if I add y together and divide by 2, I should get 2. I'll give a little bit more time. So the problem is this thing over here. I have to times both sides by 2. And so if I do that, I'm going to get 1 plus y is 4. And then I have to deal with this 1 over here. I take away 1 from both sides, I should get y is 3. So that was what we call like I would call that a more complex midpoint question. If I just give you 2 points and find the midpoint, you do need to be able to do that. But as the questions get harder, sometimes they'll give you the midpoint and pieces of the outer points, and you need to know how to rearrange the formula. So again, I just want to do a quick check of where the group is at. If you feel okay with that type of question, thumbs up. If you feel very confused, thumbs down. Just so I get a sense of how the class is feeling, since I don't have body language. Okay, so we're somewhere in between. I will have questions in a moment. In fact, I'm going to set 2 questions for you now, and then I'm going to take questions from the class. So this is what I want you to do. The 2 questions you have to do are the following. I want you to find the gradient of the 2 green lines that I've just colored in there, which I'm going to make nice and big. So we don't have time to do all 4, so just do 2 of them. And then for those who are done with that, I want you to try and do this midpoint question. Okay, so basically, what are the questions you're doing? You are finding me the gradient of AB. You're finding me the gradient of GH. And then you're answering this question, this 1.2 up here. Over to you guys. And then while you do that, I'm going to take questions. So Yolanda, if you could just, any students who had their hands up, or any students in the chat who've asked a question, go ahead.
Chipang has his hand up for a while now. So Chipang, please ask your question.
Go ahead, Chipang.
Okay. Sorry to take you a bit back, sir, but can you please just go back to the point where you were calculating the values for E, right?
Yeah. Let's just quickly zoom in. E.
Okay. Were you using the coordinates of D and C to find E?
Yes, I was.
Then you would use the X. Okay, so going back to the formula, right? It's X 2 plus x1 and everything. Isn't the...
Like
okay,
that.
so, yes. So isn't x1, well, finding the x values, isn't it 6 plus 2 and not 6 plus 6? Or do I have the wrong values down?
So you're trying to find E. So you're trying to find E.
Yes, sir. So if you used D and C, right?
No, you used A and you used A and C. That's why. To get E. So you just were using the wrong points. So if you look at the question, we used A and C to get E.
Oh, you used A and C. So okay.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
So
Cool.
you can't use D and C.
Well, so the
Because
question
you
said in order to find the point E, you had to use A and C to generate the point E. That was just how the question was worded. So you had to have A and you had to have C, and then you had to use those 2 points. So it was just the fact that you were looking at the wrong combination of points.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
Thank you, sir.
Pleasure. Do we have a next question?
Apelele, 24. Oh, no, you've disappeared.
Sorry, sir.
All good?
Can you please make the thing bigger?
Which one?
The one we're doing now.
Okay, you mean like this question?
Yes, please.
Okay, all good.
Thank you.
No, it's a pleasure. That's the magic of zooming in and zooming out. I must just make sure I've got the right highlighting in the right place. So those were the 2 points that we were working on. So GH. Yeah, so guys, if you can't see the screen, obviously I can't always adapt it, but if you put a message in the chat, then the TA or Yolanda or whoever is there will tell me, and then I can change the screen to help you within reason. I can try my best to help. Yeah, and to Kozo, you want to ask a question? Go ahead.
So about the gradient,
Yes.
do you choose whether you make it y square minus y1? Since I see you did y square plus negative y1.
Okay, so what I did when I did, let's say AB, I chose to have A as the point where I started. So I went 3 minus 1, and I got this one over here. And I notice how I made sure my Y was on top. I always start with Y because it's easy to make that mistake. Then I go back to the same point where I started, which was A, and I go 2 minus 6, which is here. So I just made an arbitrary choice. But if I'd started the other way around, that wouldn't have been a problem. It would have just been 1 minus 3 and 6 minus 2, which gives me minus 2 over 4, which gives me the same answer. So as long as I'm consistent, it's not a problem.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Pleasure. Okay, what do we get? I get gradients of minus 2 over 4, or which is the same as minus a half, so that's great. What do you get for GH? Now, if I look at the direction of it, I'm expecting it to be negative. See, so put your answer in the chat for GH. And then for those who are feeling comfortable with gradient, can you work out what's going on in the other question? So can you please do corrections in finding the value of X? That's the next part of the question. It's coming to a place near you soon, I promise. Maybe what I can do in the meantime is I'll say, like, I'll draw a little picture to help you understand the question. So if A is on this side, which is 6, 3, and then on this side, we'll say that's B and that's X1. See if that helps you get going with the question over there. And then what I get for GH is I get -3/4 for GH, which makes me happy because I see it's a negative, right? So that's good. And so if you think about all the skills we've practiced our midpoint and our distance. Let's just see if we can do this midpoint formula question here. And then I think we need to have a little break. So what am I really after, I suppose, is the question. I want this X. And so I think I need to go 6 plus X over 2 equals what? I know it's that. I know it's that. So it's actually the X is always first. And so it's going to be -2. And then I have to deal with this pesky 2 over here. If I times both sides by 2, I should get that. And then I've got to deal with this thing over here. Now, what's the opposite of +6? It's -6. So I'm going to take away 6 from both sides. And if I do that, if I take away 6 from -4, I get -10. And so my answer would be -10 is X. So again, obviously, the more you do this, the more it becomes repetitive. But for this section, the bread and butter marks, the marks that are going to get you the first 40% of your result are going to be applying the distance, the midpoint, and the gradient. And so you just want to practice these until you are absolutely comfortable with them. Now, I have chosen in the second lesson to do slightly harder questions, but I want you to make sure that you also, if you need to, go back to the first lesson or previous recordings on Watobe to just make sure you build up a good base of knowledge with this. Okay, quick little break. What I want you to do is, actually, before I go to the break, are there any obvious questions that want to be asked? Or any people who are? Okay, so very quick brain break. What we're going to do is you're going to stand up and we're going to be a bit silly tonight. Well, we'll see how silly I can be. So I want everyone to stand up. You can't take yourself too seriously, guys. You gotta just roll with it. And so I want you to get a pen, but we're going to do a variation on this thing before. So level 1 is to balance a pen on your nose and see if you can do it. You have to then stand on one leg and see, can you balance? Oh, it's getting hard. See if you can balance a pen on your nose, but then stand on one leg and see if you can do that. It should be taking all your brain power. There should be nothing left for anything else. You don't have any time to be I'm standing on my right leg and I'm just about doing it. Okay, who's doing it the best? I see some impressive, Mbali is a natural. Notile is not bad either. Madibane also looking very solid there. If there was an Olympics for this, I think we'd send you guys there. Who else is able to call it the pen balancing challenge? Kamvaletu is looking like a natural. Nicole's not bad either. Keep going, Nicole. You can do it. Okay. So guys, I hope that not only are you getting better at maths, but you're getting better at balancing things. That's and I hope that that gave you a moment to just release your brain from what we're doing. The idea is that you always, I give you something hard enough that there's no chance for anything else to get into your brain. All right. What I want to do quickly is I want to run through a few things about straight lines in the rest of the lesson today. So we're going to do some multiple choice questions. So multiple choice question number 1 is, what is the y-intercept of the following line? Okay, what is the y-intercept of, and you need to vote A, B, C, or D. Okay. Do we get marks for writing the formula in the exam, or can we skip that step? Katleho, you don't normally get marks for writing it. You sometimes get marks for substituting into the formula. Okay, so the answer that's coming through is 0, 4, or C, and you guys are quite correct. That's the y-intercept, and it's the point 0, 4. Fantastic. What is the y-intercept of that line? So what's the y-intercept of that line? Okay, you guys are winning at this. You can see that point. So in this case, the y-intercept is the point 0, 2. Now, the reason I'm doing these questions is the second part of the lesson I want to do now is, how do you find the equation of a straight line? And so now that you've identified the y-intercept, in this particular question, if I said to you, what is the equation of this line, you need to feel comfortable doing that. And in order to find the equation of a line, there's two things. You need either 2 points, or you need 1 point and the gradient. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you now how I would find the equation of a straight line, and then I'm going to give you a chance to practice this. Now, all straight lines have a standard form, and the standard form that you learn about is something called y equals mx plus c, where m is the gradient of the line and c is the y-intercept. So since you guys already know what the y-intercept is, in order to find the equation of this line, you just need to find the gradient. So in fact, since we've been doing gradient, I want you guys to find me the gradient. Go ahead, find the gradient for this line. And then once you found the gradient, I want you to write out the equation of the straight line. And I want you to pop that in the chat. I feel like I've given you enough of a hint. So you've got a straight line there. You're going to find me the gradient, put it in the chat. And then after you've done that, you are going to write the equation of the straight line that you've now found. So let's see what we get for gradient. Now, I'm going to start with this point. Notice how I'm doing my y's first. Okay, so watch out. It's not just 2/3, it's minus 2/3. Now, what's the equation of this line going to be? That's what I want to know from you guys. Okay, have a look at the standard form. So in order to find the equation of a straight line, all straight lines have the form mx plus c, where m is the gradient and c is the y-intercept. If you know what the gradient is, now did I mention what the y-intercept is? Didn't we do that earlier in the question? Wasn't that this point over here? Or if we look on the actual line, isn't that the y-intercept? So how do we combine that to get the, yes, I see students coming through with it. So it's going to be, the equation of the line is minus 2/3 x plus 2. Okay, so that is the equation of the straight line. And another thing you have to be able to do very quickly in the section is find the equation of a straight line. And so we're going to practice that a couple more times now. Okay, let's leave that one. We'll come back to that one in a moment. What I want you to do in this question is, I think all of us know that the y-intercept in this question is going to be the point 0, 1. We can see that. And then over here, this is called, so that was called the y-intercept. Then down here, let's make it red. What's this thing called? What's the red dot that I'm making? What's that called? I want to know from my class, what is that red dot? I've given a lot of attention to the y-intercept. Okay, yes, it's called the x-intercept. It's where the straight line intersects with the x-axis, or intercept it. And if I'm looking at this visually, I think the coordinates of the x-intercept are that. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to find me the equation of this line. And the hint I'm giving you is you need to use this formula. That's the format it needs to end up being in. And I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do that. Fantastic. So hopefully some of you have seen this before, but even if you haven't, now's your chance to catch up, because one of the reasons Watobe is around is we know that students have missed out on a lot of schooling over the last 2 years. And so we have these little gaps, and we need a chance, a place to ask questions about the things that we maybe have just missed out over the last 2 years. Are there any questions from the students that want to be asked while we work on this?
Hands up if anyone has a question.
Cool. They're probably just working very hard, which is good, but yeah, we can.
Okay, Katlejo has a question.
Go ahead.
Hi, sir.
Hello.
So for the previous question, I used the formula that we learned at school, which is y minus ya equals to x, open bracket, x minus xa.
Perfect. Yeah. That's
but
also
I got
fine.
a different answer, sir.
Okay, so that's where we shouldn't get a different answer. What you sometimes see is, yeah, so you basically have y something equals a grade, or some schools will, and there's nothing wrong with this, they'll use something like this, x minus, like that, or some equivalent form of that, but we should be getting the same answer. Let's just see what happens on this one. If we're still different, then I'll have a look, okay? So and this actually is an important point, there's 2 ways that we can find mx plus c. What I'm favoring right now is just figuring out the gradient and then figuring out c by looking at the graph. But sometimes we need a bit more than that. I will go over that later in the lesson. In this particular question, once I've figured out my gradient, I know that the equation of the final answer, let me write it down here, is going to be a quarter x. Now, what is c? Well, if you look at the graph, the y-intercept is 1, and so it's going to be plus 1. Now, there shouldn't be a negative in the answer because minus a minus, this bit, becomes a plus. Right? So that should be a plus. So just watch out for that bit over there. I will go over the straight line in a bit more detail later in the lesson, but I just want to build up to harder and harder questions with each question I ask. I don't want to start with anything that's too complicated. Okay. Now, let me zoom in a little bit. I'll leave the other stuff on the board. For those who are feeling comfortable with this, I want you to try and answer that question that is currently at the bottom of the screen. I want you to start on that. And let me even make it a bit bigger. Oh, too much. I think I'm trying to do too much, guys. Sometimes you just have to do less. So try and, in this case, we're not given a drawing, you're just given 2 points. And this poses the question, okay, you should all start by finding the gradient. Let that be the starting point. Then I'm going to debate what happens at that point, because there's 2 methods that schools will use, and I want to show you both methods, but both methods need the gradient. And so let's start by making sure you find the gradient for this, and then I'll show you both methods. And if you're able to get the answer, then just put your answer in the chat. You can say A, B, C, or D as your answer. Okay, so let's start. You don't have to start here, but I am, so 2. And then this is 3 minus 1. Yep, that looks okay to me. And so minus and minus, so I have 6 over 2. So I get my gradient is 3. So I know I can exclude like this one and this one, but I don't know which of these 2. And so when we find the equation of a straight line, we have to ask ourselves, okay, great, you know what the gradient is, but you still don't know what C is. And so you need a way for finding C. Now, the one method for doing that is taking one of the points over here and subbing it into the straight line. Because if a point is on the line and you sub it into the equation, it always makes that equation true. So this is method 1. I'll call it M1 or method 1. And then I'm going to do method 2 in a second. So I always choose the easiest of the 2 points. And the easiest point to me looks like 3, 2, because I stay away from the negatives. So if I sub my 3, 2 into this equation, make sure the y goes to the y, which is, you know, the 2 over here goes here. And then I go 3 times 3 plus c. Okay, so what have we got left now? Well, we know that we got 2 equals 9 plus c, and I have to take away 9 from both sides. If I take away 9 from, if I go 2 minus 9, I get minus 7, which is c. And so the equation of my straight line would be 3x minus 7. So that is method number 1. Now the other method that schools will use, which I will call method number 2, is they will say y, and they'll say they'll also need to choose a point. So let me choose a different color. They will say, look, you've got your gradient, write it down, it is 3. And then on the left-hand side, you choose a point and you go y minus whatever the y coordinate is. So in this case, it's 2. And then on the other side, you write x minus the other coordinate, which is 3. Sorry, I'm making this a bit messy. That's one way of doing it. Sometimes they do it in a couple of different ways, but you then you get you multiply out your bracket, so 3x minus 9, and then the problem is this minus 2, and so you add 2 to both sides, and if you add 2 to both sides, you get the same answer, y equals 3x minus 7. So both of those ways give you the same answer. It's not wrong. I will tend to follow this way. Because I think that on the whole, it's simpler, but everyone's different. So it's not really for me to say what way you must do it. And I will try and do both ways. There is actually another way of writing this, but I'll wait for students to ask questions as to what and how we can do that. Okay, let's do one more like this. Let's finish the lesson with this question. So what is the equation of the straight line passing through these 2 points? Oh, I didn't even give the answer above. Sorry. It's C. So the answer should have been C. And let's finish with this question over here. And then once you got your answer, you can pop it in the chat. Oh, wait, I'm making a silly mistake. Look at me, sure. -5 minus. Oh. -5 is -10. 3 minus 2 is 5 -2. So call this method 2. Method 1. So what you'll notice is I'm writing down a point that I'm going to use. So I didn't have to choose -2,5, but to me, the -2,5 looked like the simpler of the two. But would it have worked if I did another point? Or if I'd chosen 3 - 5? Yes, it would have definitely worked. But I happened to make that choice. So this will be X. On the side. For C. Over here we've got so I've gone a little bit fast, guys, because of the time. But what I want to do is I want you to just check and see, look, I've done both methods in the hopes that I can, help as many students feel comfortable as possible. I'll just talk you through what I did. So step 1 was to find the gradient, which is, marks in the bag. then what I did was once I had that gradient, I put it into my straight line formula, but I was missing C. And so in order to find C, I need to have a point, and I grab the point minus 2,5. In method 1, I substitute that point in, and I simply then get C. And once I find C, that's the same value that's going to be in the final thing here. So minus 2x plus 1. If I use method number 2, I also get my gradient to start with. I also have to use the point, but in this case, I go x minus whatever the x coordinate is and y minus whatever the y coordinate is there. And so we should see the answer of minus 2x plus 1. The answer should be A. Okay, what I want to do is two things. I want to do a quick poll to get us a sense of how we are doing generally as a group on pace. And so I just want to ask you to answer that poll on pacing. And then what I want to do is ask Nicole or let's see, if you could put the quiz in the link to the quiz in the background, not the background, sorry, the chat. And then if there are questions, I will stay on the line to help students. But for students who feel like they've got the straight line thing, you can go off after you've done the poll, you can click on the link for the quiz and start your formative quiz. And so we are done for the day. So thank you very much. I hope that you have had fun learning. And then for those students who have questions, you can put your hand up and I'll try and take 1 or 2 questions to finish the lesson. Okay. Pilot Sedi? Yes, who is that?
It is me, Teddy, sir.
Go ahead. What's your question?
Sir, does sir see the points marked blue?
Yeah.
Like
in blue,
by
yeah.
method 2? Method 2?
Method 2, yeah.
Does it matter which points we use, sir?
It doesn't. So you could have also used the point 3 minus 5. That would have been completely fine as well. The only difference, and I don't want to get too cluttered here, when you set this question out, if you had chosen that point, you would have had, let's start on this side. So you would still have your minus 2, but instead you'd have x minus 3 here. And then on this side, you would have y minus 5. Okay, and you'll get the same answer in the end. But like I said, I will probably do method 2 about 1/3 of the time. I'll do method 1 about 2/3 but again, it's hard to know. I'm not saying which way is wrong or right. Everyone must find whatever works for them, as long as we're getting the same answer. All right, cool. All right, guys. If there are no more questions and you filled out the chat, the poll, if I could ask you to do the poll, then I'm going to ask you to go off and do the quiz. I hope that I hope you enjoy it. I've enjoyed teaching you tonight, and well done for making the effort to, work hard at your maths and, go about improving. I think I have a lot of respect for people who are willing to work hard and to improve, So well done to you for being here. Nizole, you have a question. Go ahead.
Sir, can you go back to the exercise where it said, I think it was exercise 1.2. It said find the values of x in M if M is the midpoint of A and B.
Yeah, I can. That was this question over here.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, let's do it. You want to just see the writing? Is that the main thing you want to see?
Can you explain how you did it as well?
Okay. So first of all, you have to notice that M is the midpoint. So what I did was I actually did a little drawing, right? And can you see how I have A on the one side and B on the other side? And then M is in the middle. And you'll notice then I highlight the X coordinate because the thing I'm after is an X coordinate. So I tell myself, look, in this question, only these three things are going to be involved. And then I ask myself, what is the midpoint formula? And the midpoint formula says, take this one, 6, add it to whatever this is, X, divide by 2, and get wherever the X midpoint is. Then it becomes a separate problem. Now this is a problem of an equation. And so I have to solve an equation. The way I solve an equation is I isolate X. But in order to isolate X, I need to deal with the 2, which is highlighted. And so I use what's called the inverse operation. And so the inverse operation of divide by 2 is times by 2. And so I times both sides by 2. And what it has the effect of doing is making that 1, which essentially 1 doesn't affect anything. What's minus 2 times 2? It's minus 4, which is this thing. But now I've got another problem. Because 6 plus X is minus 4, the 6 is getting in the way. But what is the inverse operation of plus 6? It's minus 6. So I take away 6 on this side, and I take away 6 on this side. These two are the same as 0. And then all I've got left behind is X, and then minus 4 minus 6 is minus 10. Okay, so I hope that is useful to you. All right, guys, I'm going to call it there for tonight. Best of luck with the quiz, and then I will see you again on Monday. Okay, I hope that you had a good lesson. I enjoyed teaching you.